The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Wyoming Women's Business Center's 2019 webinar series. Today our topic is Let's Build a Budget, both personal and business applications. My name is Waldo Smith and I will be your moderator for the program today. If you'll look on the right side of your screen at the GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see two boxes, one marked question panel and one marked chat panel. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please put them in one of these areas. I will be monitoring those and pass them on to our presenter. And then we will also have time at the end for questions. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to you on our YouTube channel later on today. Just go to YouTube and type in Wyoming Women's Business Center. Be sure to subscribe to check out the other webinars that we have recorded in that space. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook. And for more information about our programs, you can go to our website, which is www.wyomingwomen.org. Immediately following the presentation, a survey will launch as you leave the program. We ask that you please complete the survey, as this provides us with valuable data that we then can share with our funding partners and gives us insight as to needs for future webinars. All participants are muted to minimize background noise. So once again, if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat or question box on the GoToWebinar panel. Our presenter today is Christine Langley, a fellow business counselor of mine here at the Women's Business Center. She is a sales and marketing expert with over 15 years history and achievements in demonstrated success driving sales growth in highly competitive markets. In addition to her corporate experience in general management, sales management, and human resources, she is also a small business entrepreneur and understands the joys and challenges associated with small business ownership. So with that, I will turn it over to Christine.
All right. Hello, everyone. Are we ready to build a budget? It's one of my favorite topics. I'm hoping it is one of your favorite topics too, as you chuckle to yourself when I say this. Before we jump in, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Wyoming Women's Business Center and what we do in the state of Wyoming and the type of services that we can provide to you. So our mission statement is promoting economic equality in Wyoming, specifically through successful business ownership. And we are a nonprofit organization. We assist individuals who want to start or expand their small business right here in the state of Wyoming. And so we do this through three different types of services that we provide. The first is business planning or counseling. I like to call it business coaching. And in business coaching, really what we're trying to do is inspire and motivate and teach and mentor you throughout the process of your entrepreneurial path. And we know that sometimes entrepreneurship can be daunting, it can be isolating. We're trying to support you through that process. We also provide networking and educational opportunities. This is an example of that, this webinar today. We also hold monthly roundtables around the state in several different cities. And then of course our YouTube channel has lots of these webinars that we've done in the past posted. And then finally, we have a microloan program. We do microloans anywhere between $500 and $50,000 to help fund startups or expansions of small businesses in Wyoming. And if you'd like more information on that, you can contact Waldo. We'll have his contact information as well as mine at the end of this webinar. All right, so today's agenda, let's make a budget, business and personal. So before we start, I want to launch a quick poll because I'd like to know, when you think of budgeting, which of the following describes you best? I get excited because it means I'm in control of my finances. I feel challenged but capable. I feel stuck because I always miss something in the process. I feel lost, overwhelmed, and I want to quit. Or I get angry, right? All of these are acceptable responses for this webinar. I just like to get an idea of where my audience is at so that I know what I'm teaching to today. So we've got about half the vote in right now. I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds so we can get everybody participating. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited you're taking time out of your busy Thursday to focus on finances. It's one of the most important aspects in your business as well as in your personal life. All right, guys, let's close this poll out and see what we got. I'm excited because it means I'm in control of my finances. 75%. Okay, we got a bunch of A+ people on the call today. This is very, very exciting. And only 25% of you feel challenged but capable. And I have nobody feeling overwhelmed or wanting to quit. So excellent, excellent, excellent. It's going to be a good day. All right, guys, so let's understand the basics of personal and business finances before we dive into this. And so if you are resonating with some of the things on this screen, that makes sense. Nearly 4 out of 5 every U.S. worker lives paycheck to paycheck. So if that's you, you're in good company. Over a quarter never save any money from month to month. And almost 75% of U.S. workers are in some form of debt, and most assume they always will be. So when we think about financial literacy, it's really the possession of skills that allow people to make smart decisions with their money. And so if you are a financially literate consumer, then you've mastered 3 things. The first is budgeting, which is our focus today. The second is emergencies. And the third is debt. And so to give you an overall picture of financial literacy, there's 5 basic questions that I always ask clients to understand where you're at. And if you can answer yes to all of these questions, then you're probably close to being a master in financial literacy. If you can only answer 1 yes out of 5, then you've got some learning to do. If you can't answer yes to any of these, that's okay. It just means we know where to start. So again, our focus today is on budgeting. And so number 1, do you know how to create a monthly budget that includes all your basic expenses, your bills, any debts, and your sinking funds for future purchases? Sinking funds are like savings, right? Money that you know a bill is coming up in the future, like maybe you pay your car insurance, your home mortgage insurance every year. And you have sinking funds for that future purchase. Number 2, are you currently debt-free, or are you taking active steps to reduce your debts? Number 3, do you know how much money you spend to cover living expenses over a period of 3 to 6 months? And then 4, do you have an emergency fund in place that will allow you to get through a sudden large life event like a layoff or a totaled vehicle without having to borrow money? And then last, do you have an understanding of how compound interest allows invested money to grow over time? So we're really going to talk about primarily questions 1 through 4 today, and we'll leave compound interest for another session. All right, so one question that I get sometimes is, why budget in business? And so before we list off the reasons that you should budget in your business, let's launch another poll so that I understand, again, how advanced this group is. So which statement best describes you and your business budgeting? I want you to select one of the following. I forecast each year, and then I track my progress monthly. I create a forecast annually, but struggle to track. I have financial goals for income and expenses, but not in writing. So this is like you kind of have it in your mind of what you're trying to accomplish, but you haven't committed it to writing either on a spreadsheet or in a software program. You work hard and you hope you make enough money to pay the bills. And then finally, you don't like to think about it. You only deal with it for taxes. Okay, we got about 50% of the vote in, giving you guys a few more seconds to finish answering. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so this is a little bit more split. We've got 20% of you that can forecast each year, and then you track your progress monthly. So I'd say that group's a little bit more advanced. The biggest group here is sort of in the middle. I create a forecast annually, but I struggle to track. That's really normal, and so we'll talk about ways to fix that today. I have a financial goal for income and expenses, but not in writing. And then I've got some people that you don't like to think about it, you deal with it for taxes. And this gets back to just some of your issues or thoughts, beliefs around money. And we can work on that certainly on a one-on-one basis. But remember that if you put strategies and actual tools in place, then your skills increase and you'll be able to track on an ongoing regular basis. All right, so why budget in business? So forecasting your income and your expenditures allows you to forecast your profitability. And when you can forecast your profitability and know how much money you're going to make, then that becomes a tool for decision making, because you can decide if you actually have money to reinvest in the business, or if you have money that you can pay yourself as a bonus or increase income to your employees. So again, a forecast is a really good guess, right? And you're anticipating what your income is going to be for the year, sometimes broken out all the way month by month, which is our recommendation. And then you're forecasting what your expenditures are going to be. It doesn't mean you won't get surprised by a really good or a really not so good month. It doesn't mean you're never going to be surprised by an expenditure that comes in that you weren't planning for. But it gives you a general plan that you can follow. And it's a great tool for decision making. It's also a means to monitor business performance. So assuming that you're tracking every single month income and expenditures, which in a business environment, we call this an income statement or a profit and loss statement, then you're able to know from month to month where your business is at. This also helps you make good decisions. All right, so when we talk about business budgeting, let's get a sense of personal budgeting, so that we know where you're at when we talk personal budgets. So which statement best describes you and your personal budgeting? I budget monthly, I track every dollar spent, and I save. I set a monthly budget, but I struggle to track my spending. I know what my monthly income is, and I understand my basic expenses, but again, maybe it's not in writing, right? I generally know my income, but I'm real confused on my expenses. And lastly, I check my bank balances to see if I have money to spend. So one of my favorite stories about personal budgeting, I had a friend when I was in college, and we would go out on Thursday or Friday night, and I would go and pick her up, and she would say, let's go to the ATM on this particular corner in the town that we lived in. And I would say, why do we have to go to that ATM? And she would say, well, because I can get as little as $10 out of that ATM instead of 20. And I'm not sure how much is in my account. So when I go there, I just put my card in and I start at the $50 mark, and then I work my way down if it denies me until I get to a number where it'll give me cash. So this would be an example of someone that checks their bank balance to see if they have money and then withdraws it. We hope she's doing better at this point. All right, let's take a look how you guys are doing. So we kind of are all across the board, right? So we've got 33% budgeting monthly and tracking every dollar spent and saved. Bravo to you. We have about 22% that sets a monthly budget, but again, you're struggling to track it. You know your monthly income and understand your basic expenses. Got a good percentage of people in that group, and then a couple people checking your bank balance to see if you have money to spend. So one of the things that you might notice is you might have answered similarly between your business budgeting and your personal budgeting, because a lot of times our money habits flow between our personal and our business. So I always tell my clients, any problems or struggles in your personal life are going to show up in your business. Any problems or struggles in your business are going to show up in your personal life. So that saying of it's not personal, it's business, that is not true. Actually, everything in your business is personal and vice versa. So any of these financial literacy issues that you struggle with in your personal life, they're certainly going to show up in your business. And that's why it's important when you learn to budget that you budget on both sides, not just your business, but also in your personal life. And that's why we're covering both today. All right, so when you think about personal budgeting, what are all the reasons? And what you might notice about this list is that they could be eerily similar to why you should also budget in your business, right? Money is money. Doesn't matter necessarily what account it is in, it still holds the same value and can still do the same things for you. So budgeting in your personal life gives you control over your money, number one. Number two, it keeps you focused on your money goals. It makes you aware of what's going on with your money and helps you organize your spending as well as your saving. It makes you decide in advance how your money will work for you. It enables you to save for expected as well as unexpected costs. Number seven, it enables you to communicate with your significant others about money. And this is huge because we know that the number one divorce rate reason for someone separating or getting divorced in the United States is communication problems. And often those communication problems are around money. Number eight, it provides you with an early warning for potential problems. It can help you determine if you can actually take on debt and how much, right? Because you might qualify to purchase something, or a credit card company may want to give you a credit card with X number of dollars available on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can afford to take out all of that debt. And so a great reason to budget both in your personal and business life is to really understand how much you can truly afford, because banks and credit card companies don't always do a great job of explaining to you what percentage of your income should be going towards debt or how much you can afford of your income to put towards debt. And then lastly, it enables you to produce extra money sometimes through reduction of fees. So if we budget and we track all of our expenses, we know exactly where we're at, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to get some type of fee from your bank for, say, overdraft, or a fee or an interest, hit from your credit card company. All right, so zero-based budgeting. I train on zero-based budgeting because it's a way of budgeting where your income minus your expenses equals zero. And the reason that I do this is because you want to make sure your expenses match what's coming in during the month and that you're giving every dollar a job. So I want you to think about every dollar as one of your staff or employees, right? If you walked into your business and one of your staff members was just standing around not doing anything, you would say, hey, get to work. I've assigned you to do X, right? So I want you to think of your money the same way. If your money is just sitting in a bucket and it's not assigned a job, it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything for you. So we want to make sure that every dollar has a job. So there's three basic steps when we create a budget. The first step is to identify a budget category for both your income and your expenses. So you may have several different income categories, especially if you're a small business owner. You might be married, or you may combine your finances with another family member, and so you may have several lines of income, right? Paycheck number one, paycheck number two, and then maybe your business, income, or you have some kind of a side hustle or side job where you create income from there. Maybe that's paycheck number three. Maybe you receive commission on your job. That could be another line item for income. But when we think about budget categories, we always want to start with the basics first. And so these are the high-level basic expenses that we all know, right? We have housing, we have utilities, we have food, we have insurance, right? There's transportation, kind of the big overarching categories. And remember to be flexible when you're creating these budget categories. It doesn't matter if you miss a category 1 month and you can't figure out where to categorize something. You can always add it. We call this rolling with the punches, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. This is a living, breathing document that we're going to create today. But the most important thing is that you actually start today. So there's lots of different reasons to put off budgeting that we can all come up with. It doesn't matter what day of the month it is that you start. It's just important that you get started. So when we think about categories and categorizing your income and expenses, I want to hear from you. When it comes to categorizing, select one of these following so that I know where you fall, right? I know all my exact income and expense categories, right? So you've already got the category thing licked. You're already done with step one. If that's you, then I want you to mark, I know all my exact income and expense categories. Another one is I generally know my income and expense categories, right? So I have a sense, they're like in my head of what my categories are. I know my income categories, right? So I know where all my money is coming from as far as it coming in, but when it comes to my expenses, I just sort of lump them all together. Back before my days of extensive budgeting, my husband used to ask me, so what are our expenses on a monthly basis? And I would go down the list of the big expenses and he would say, well, what's the credit card? And I would say, well, the credit card's $1,500 a month. And he said, well, what are we spending on the credit card? And I said, I don't know. All I can tell you is every single month it's around $1,500. I mean, I can pull out every single statement, we can go through every single line item, but it's $1,500. No matter what we do, it doesn't matter. The credit card always comes in at $1,500. Right? Not a great answer, which led us to learn how to budget very early on in our marriage. All right, the next one, I'm confused on both my income and expense categories, right? You're not sure where to start or what categories you should have. And then lastly, I'm upset just listening to this and I need one-on-one help. Totally okay if you answer that question. Okay, let's take a look at where we're at. Oh, very good, very good. All right, so 11% are right on. You know exactly where you're at when it comes to categories, and the rest of you generally know your income and expense categories. All right, so today what we're going to do is really try to break it down and get you going with a specific budget that has all the specific categories that you need. Secondly, after categories, is to actually add the numbers in. And so we want to start with all of the income. And we talked about that just now, all the different income kind of line items that you might have of different paychecks. You'll see that in the spreadsheet when we go to pull that up. One of the questions I often get is, what about irregular income, right? So what if I'm on commission? What if I'm paying myself out of my business and I just kind of decide on a monthly basis how much I can afford to pay myself? All of that is okay. The best way to budget if your income is irregular is take a look at last year's income, if that's a possibility for you, and just average it out on a monthly basis, and that's where you're going to start. If you're on a salary plus commission, I always recommend that people budget about 25% of what their expected commission is plus their salary. And so then if they have a bad month, it doesn't matter. They're budgeting, based on a lower amount. And then second, after income, you're going to review your bank and credit card statements for the expense amounts. And this might also help you in the category realm. But if you need the actual amounts, this is where we're going to be adding the numbers. That's why you can always pull your credit card and your bank statements for that. All right, and step number 3 is to track and go. So like many of you have already mentioned today, you're doing okay as far as understanding your income and expenses, but tracking is your struggle. So tracking your expenses throughout the month is key, right? It doesn't count if you don't track and you don't actually reconcile at the end of the month. And the reason that we want to track every single expense is because it helps you engage with your money. When you're engaged with your money, you're more in control of your money and you're more in control of the financial decisions that you make. And so the most important thing to remember about tracking is that we just want you to make progress, right? So just because you didn't track anything for the last week doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and never do your end of the month reconciliation, right? It's okay. It's okay if you're behind. It's okay if you skipped a month and you need to get caught up. What we're trying to do is simply make progress. So let's launch one more poll before we actually start opening up our spreadsheets so that I understand how you're currently tracking your expenses. So how can you track your expenses? I want you to select one of the following. So online software or financial app, that's one way. Spreadsheets that detail all the income and expense categories. Pen and paper, writing down all income and expenses spending, or separating income or cash into envelopes for different expenses, or all of the above. So of all of these, do you think it's okay to track your expenses all these different ways? Or do you think you should be doing it one way or another? Okay. And so we've got a lot of people split on this, right? Online software, financial apps, spreadsheets, pen and paper, separating income, cash, right? Based on the specific question, of course, all of these are possible, right? You can track your expenses any of these ways, and technically it would be correct. What I'm going to recommend to you today is that you use an online software or a financial app to do this, because I think it's much more likely that you'll maintain budgeting if you do it with a software that does most of the work for you. But to practice and to start building your budget today, we're actually going to use a spreadsheet. All right, so recommended budgeting percentages. So this is a question that I get often when people are putting their personal budget together. And there are some questions about your business budget as well. For example, how much should you be spending in advertising or something like that? Those questions are often better suited when I know specifically what your industry is and what the standard is, you know, for your particular industry. Also, how far along you are in your business. So that's probably better left to a one-on-one coaching session. But for personal budgeting, you'll see, according to this chart here on the right-hand side of your screen, that there's some basics when it comes to budgeting. So savings, 10 to 15% of your income, giving 10 to 15% of your income, your housing should be less than 35% of your income, food is 10 to 15%, right? So this is just a general snapshot of categories and the percentage of income that you can be budgeting. All right, so now it's time, and we're going to build some budgets. This is very exciting. So I want you to go over to the right-hand side of your screen in your GoToWebinar control panel, should be over here somewhere, and click on the Handouts tab, and you're going to see two different handouts. There's a Word document, and that's something that you can download so that you have it for after this session. There's a bunch of links on there for different online software programs and some resources that I think will be helpful to you. But what we're going to cover right now is the Let's Make a Budget spreadsheet. So that Excel document is what I want you to go ahead and open, and we're actually going to start building your budget. And so I'm going to open my budget up here on the screen. So this is a mock budget that I have developed specifically for you guys today. And you will see that there's 3 tabs on this spreadsheet. Now your spreadsheet is empty, right? You don't have any numbers filled in here. I filled in the numbers in advance just to help us for today's webinar. But your spreadsheet is going to be blank, but it has the formulas in there to total your income and your expenses, and then it will show you at the bottom what your net profit is. And so there's 3 tabs at the bottom of this spreadsheet. There's personal budget, there's advanced personal budget, and then there's the business budget. And so we're going to start with a personal budget, and I'm hoping that all of you have this spreadsheet up on your screen right now, and it's zeroed out. And you'll notice up here in the income, there's paycheck 1, paycheck 2, and then other income. All right, so for this example, paycheck number 1 comes in at $2,500. Paycheck number 2 comes in at $4,000. Now, rarely do people get paid in, you know, exact amounts this way. And remember that this is your net amount. This is your take-home pay, right? So it's not your gross pay, it's your take-home pay that we're budgeting off of. So person number one, $2,500, person number two, $4,000, and then they bring in some other income, which is $400 a month. Maybe they manage a homeowners association, maybe they have a little side business, walking dogs, who knows, but they bring in an extra $400 from some other place. And so the total household income for this couple is $6,900 a month. And so as we go down into the expense categories, this is just a personal basic budget. And so what I've tried to include in here is just the big bucket categories that almost everyone has in their household. As we take a look at the advanced personal budget, you'll see that there's, you know, a ton of different categories. So you can get very specific when it comes to budgeting, which is my preference, because it makes me feel even more in control of my money, or you can get general. And so I would say that this is more of a general budget. If you're just starting out and you've never budgeted before, then I would encourage you to just start with this basic personal budget. If you feel like you're a little bit more advanced and ready to take it to the next level, then I would click on the advanced personal budget and take a look at all of those different categories. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So under giving, you know, the recommendation is somewhere between 5 and 10%. You know, of your income. And so this couple has taken 10% of their income, which is $690 a month, and that's under giving. Emergency fund, again, 5 to 10% is recommended. So this couple's taken 10% and put it into their emergency fund. Housing, the hope is that your housing is less than 35% of your income. I'd like to see it closer to 25% of people's income because life's expensive these days and often people are carrying debt. So you want to be sure that your mortgage and your rent or your rent is not too high. So for this couple, it's $1,725 a month. Their water, natural gas, electricity, cable, internet, and trash. Those are some basic numbers for housing and utilities. And then under transportation, they have gas, fuel, and then maintenance. For food, they have groceries and restaurants, $1,000, a little over $1,000 for groceries, $200 for restaurants. Under personal, there's clothing, phone, hair and cosmetics, fun money, and subscriptions. And so it's always a good idea to remember those subscriptions and always a good idea to track that fun money and where you're spending. Under lifestyle, this couple looks like they've got some kids. Obviously, they're not too young, but maybe it's just for a babysitter in the evenings or something. And so they've budgeted $100 a month for childcare, $100 for entertainment. Looks like they've got a pet. They spend about $30, a month on pet care. And then they have a miscellaneous category for just things that they can't figure out where to categorize it. And so they have a miscellaneous category. This is something I always recommend because there's clearly always something that could come up that doesn't fit into one of these categories. Now for me, when I have something come up in a month that doesn't fit into one of my categories, I throw it into miscellaneous, but then I create a category for that for the following month so that in the future, I know that that's an expense that I'm going to have going forward. All right, under health, we have gym, medicine, and doctor's visits. And then with insurance, lots of different types of insurance, health insurance, life insurance, auto insurance, homeowners or renters insurance. And then down here, it looks like they're carrying a little bit of credit card debt where they're probably just making the minimum monthly payment. And then they do have at least one car payment. So you'll notice that their total expenses are the exact number, $6,900, as their income, $6,900. And so their net profit is zero. And what does that mean? That means that there's no extra money and that this is a zero-based budget. So that's the goal. We want your net profit to be zero because we want all of your money to be categorized because every single dollar is getting a job. All right, let's take a look at your advanced personal budget, just so you get a sense of how detailed this can get. So up here, we've included lots more income categories: paycheck 1, paycheck 2, bonuses and commissions, tips, side hustle income, alimony that you receive, child support that you receive, gifts that you receive, right? All of this stuff can be budgeted. And then when we get into giving, we've actually separated out the different types of giving that you might do. When we get into savings, we've gone beyond the emergency fund into other things that we'd like to save for: retirement, college, new car, income taxes. So as I'm going through these categories, I want you to keep working on your personal budget, whether you're using the basic personal budget that we started with, or whether you want to get into the advanced personal budget. If you've got some of your expenses handy, or you think you know what they are, I want you to start plugging in those numbers so that you have something that you're working towards completing by the end of this webinar. So debt, we've gotten a little bit more detailed here: credit cards, car payments, student loans, medical debt, personal loans, auto loan payments, alimony. You can get specific and actually name things yourself, right? So it's important that this budget works for you. What label makes the most sense to you when you're categorizing your expenses? Under housing, mortgage or rent, homeowners association fees, repair and maintenance, improvements and upgrades. It's always nice to be budgeting for things that you'd like to do going forward. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll have enough money to do an improvement or upgrade right now, but if you were able to put $50 towards improvement and upgrades each month, by the end of the year, you've got some money. You might be able to replace carpet in one room, or you might be able to, paint or do something that you've been wanting to do in your home because you planned for that and had a category for that. Property taxes, home warranty, lawn care, snow removal, home security services, all of these things could go under housing. Under utilities, we've just broken it out a little bit further into a few more categories and added phone under utilities and kind of lumped it with electricity and internet and just all the basic needs of your household. Under food, we've broken this out. So instead of just groceries and restaurants, you also have fast food, coffee shops, alcohol. Sometimes it's nice to categorize out food so that you know specifically where a lot of your money is going. Many people will say, oh, I had no idea how much I was spending on alcohol, or wow, those chai tea lattes are really costing me a lot of money. So I'm not a big fan of, cutting your budget in areas that you get a tremendous amount of enjoyment from, like your chai tea latte every single day. I think there's better ways to find money in your budget, but at the same time, this comes down to awareness. So if you're aware of what your spending is, then that can impact your behavior going forward, if that makes sense for you. So house supplies. Some people will lump in their house supplies with their groceries. Other people want to break that out, right? Cleaning supplies, paper products, tools that you might need. And then other people might want a furniture budget or a home decor budget, spa supplies, right? If you have a hot tub, you may need a separate category for that. Transportation can be broken down more so as well. And then children can be a whole category in and of itself, especially if you have, kids under the age of 12. So extracurricular activities, toys, sports gear, allowances, baby necessities, which are different a lot of times, and can come in and out of your budget as your baby gets older. School tuition or daycare costs, school uniforms, if that applies to you, school supplies. You don't want to be surprised by these requests from the school financially. And so the more that you can plan for those, the more that you can have a monthly budget or category for that, then when that bill comes home or they ask for that amount of money, it's already sitting there in the account because you've budgeted for it year round. Babysitter, child support, all the things that can go along with kids. Clothing, you may want to break your clothing out into adults, kids, as well as dry cleaning. And then same thing with personal care. You can always break this out more so that you can see exactly what you're spending. Subscriptions. Subscriptions is something that can add up to a substantial amount of money on a monthly basis and you don't realize it. I always say you spend your money $10 at a time. So take a look at all the different subscriptions or memberships that you have and see if some of those things can be condensed. You may not need all of them, or you may have some things that seem duplicative, right? So if you have Amazon Prime because you like the shipping, Amazon Prime comes with Amazon Movies, so is it necessary to also have Netflix? These are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself, and there's some potential savings there. If you have a pet, you could break out those categories as well. Fun money, same thing, breaking out the categories. Gifts, some people will do this way, where you have holiday, birthday, wedding, baby shower, service provider gifts or coworker gifts. Other people will actually have names of the individual people that they buy gifts for. So in my personal budget, I actually break it out by family member. And so I have a budget for my mother. I have a budget for each one of my children and my grandchildren. I break it out so I know exactly what my budget is on an annual basis for each person. And some years I don't spend that total budget and it carries over to the following year. And so I can be more generous based on my gift giving. And other times I have to pull from other categories because maybe I've spent more in holiday gifts than what I had budgeted. So that means I have to go up and take from another category to reimburse that category if I went over. So that's the key, is when you're balancing at zero, it means that if you go over in one category, you got to pull from somewhere else. And so it helps you make those tough decisions on whether or not you can truly afford to spend. Medical, as you can see, can be broken out into all kinds of categories, everything from doctor and dentist visits all the way down to spending on vitamins and supplements. And then finally, insurance. Of course, there's a ton of different types of insurances that you can retain. And so we've just tried to list out as many as we could think of in order to make sure that you're not missing a category. All right, so hopefully we've given you some time to really get started on your own personal budget and fill in those boxes. And then last but not least, we're just going to show you a basic business budget. Of course, if you're using an online software in order to track your income and expenses, then a lot of this information is just automatically imported, and this will look like an income statement or a profit and loss statement to you. The way that you can make this a forecast is by extending the columns out by month. So under the B column where it says budgeted, you could have the month of January, right? January 2019. And then the C column could be January actual. The D column could be February budgeted. The E column could be February actual. So you're actually tracking as you go what your actual was to your budgeted amount. The other way you could do this is just have one spreadsheet that is month by month, just budget, and then another spreadsheet that shows your actual. Again, if you have an online software, the actual will be done for you when you look at your income statement or your profit and loss statement. So up at the top, we have revenue sources, which looks eerily similar, right, to your personal budget where you add income sources. It's just in business, we call it revenue. And so if you're a service company, then you're going to have the different types of services that you provide listed. If you're a product company, you may have different types of products and products that you're selling listed. It's up to you how you want to break out those revenue categories. And so you can type over the cells that I have and start typing in what makes the most sense for your business. Under cost of goods sold, or COGS, these are materials or supplies that you use to actually perform the service that you're providing or the product that you're selling. And so you're going to list out what those things are. So for example, in a carpet cleaning business, the cost of goods sold would be the chemical that we use, the pads that we use, in order to provide the service. And so those costs would go under the cost of goods sold. And then finally, the expenses in a business. So these are just basic business expenses that almost all businesses are going to have. Just like in your personal budget, you can make this more advanced in order to ring true to what the expenses are in your business. And so it's important that you sit down and you take a look at what all of your business expenses are, and then come up with the categories and the names that make sense for you and make sense for your business. But these are some of the basic ones: accounting, advertising, bank charges, maybe credit card fees. If you accept credit cards, then there's credit card processing fees that you pay. Dues and subscriptions. For example, I use QuickBooks Online, and so I have a subscription fee that I pay each month for that. Fuel, insurance, office expenses, phone and internet, repair and maintenance. So a lot of people have equipment that they use in their business, and so there may be ongoing repair and maintenance expenses that they have. Shipping and delivery, supplies, taxes and licenses, right? If you're a food business, you have different licenses that you have to renew every single year, different taxes that you're paying for your business. Travel, if there's travel for your business, you're traveling to a trade show for marketing, that's a travel category. Utilities, if you have a separate space, say you have a retail business or you have a brick and mortar location, you're going to have utilities. You may have rent, right? That's something that's not listed here. You'd want to add that. And then wages, as well as payroll taxes. So this is basic business budgeting. And so hopefully you've been able to start plugging in some of these numbers and adding some categories in this spreadsheet. All right, so let's go and take a look now at some small business accounting softwares. So as we talk about software and small business, there are some small business accounting softwares that are ranked, just overall #1. And the #1 best reviewed product out there is QuickBooks Online. And there's a really simple reason for that. It's because they've been around the longest, right? So they've had the most updates in their software, and they're the most advanced as far as having data from customers in order to continue to build and improve their product. So it's one of the reasons we often recommend QuickBooks, either the desktop version or QuickBooks Online. Another option is FreshBooks. There's also a program for Mac users called Xero. Really small businesses, sometimes just independent contractors can be using Zoho Books, and then Wave Accounting. So I would say these are the top 5. And if you'll download that second handout that is in the handout section over in your control panel, the Word document, it has links to every single one of these accounting softwares on it. So you don't have to take notes or write this down. It's right there in that handout. You just need to download it. All right, when we talk about best personal budgeting software, there's lots of different options for personal budgeting software as well, but these are the top 5. So YNAB, which is also known as You Need a Budget. This is one of the higher ranked personal budgeting softwares. Not only is there an online version, that you can log into via the internet, but it's also an app that comes on your phone, and everything is synced together. And Envelopes is another popular one. Quicken, Intuit also does Mint. And then a new one from Dave Ramsey is called Every Dollar. They just had their 1-year anniversary, but they have over 1 million subscribers at this point, and Every Dollar is a very straightforward budgeting tool as well. It's kind of eerily similar to YNAB, in my opinion. And they have a free version and then an upgraded version that can link all of your accounts automatically to it. YNAB just is a paid version, and they automatically link all of your accounts as well. And so what I mean by linking your accounts is it automatically imports everything that goes into or out of your bank account, as well as your credit cards. So all you're having to do is then categorize each expense as it comes in, instead of actually having to enter it yourself. So again, softwares can just do a lot of the work for you, and that's why we recommend them. Okay, so we are to the question and answer column. I'm hoping that you don't look like my cartoon character over here to the right now. Again, be sure to download the resource documents in the handout section of your webinar control panel over on the right so that you have all of that information. And as you start thinking about what questions you have and typing them into either the chat box or the question box, I'm going to go over a few of the sponsors and funding partners for our program, which is the U.S. Small Business Administration, the Wyoming Business Council, the Wyoming Women's Foundation, and the AARP Foundation. So, of course, we're thankful to them. And Waldo, do we have any questions?
Carmen asked a question earlier. She said, I am a business in planning. I just use Excel for personal budgeting. If I'm going into business, should I start using business-oriented software, QuickBooks, i.e., to get used to using it? My answer was that an Excel spreadsheet is adequate, but as her business grows, she may want to expand into a specific software like QuickBooks. And you commented on that as well, that we recommend a software program early on to help them with that process. So if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, I would just say my recommendation is when you get to the point where you open up a bank account for your business, that is the same time that you should be subscribing or purchasing a software for your accounting. Because once you've actually deposited money into a business bank account and maybe gotten a business credit card, and you're actually starting to receive income and pay expenses, or sometimes in the beginning, unfortunately, we're just paying expenses and we haven't made any money yet. But all of those things are things that we want to track, and we want to track them correctly from the get-go. So I would recommend starting with a business software as soon as you actually open your checking account.
And I wanted to make a comment on the personal budgeting. My daughter and son-in-law have used that YNAB or You Need a Budget app, and they really enjoyed it, recommended it to us. They found it very useful. But I'm sure there's a lot of tremendous apps out there.
Yeah, I am personally a big fan of YNAB as well. I've been on it from the very beginning, from the beginning of the company, actually, mostly because I loved the entrepreneur's story. He's from Utah, was a CPA accountant himself, created this budget when he was in college and had already had 2 children, did it in essentially a very complicated Excel spreadsheet, and then created it into a computer program that people could download onto their desktop. And as the company has grown, he switched it up and made it a web-based application. And of course, the web-based application is awesome. The other program worked well also, but this new version of it that they launched a couple years ago is really fabulous. They also have a tremendous number of online tutorials. I'm sure lots of these companies do, but YNAB does a great job of training and giving a tremendous amount of support. And so that's why I like them. In your resource page that you were able to download from the handouts, there's a link in order to get YNAB for free for the first, I think it's 34 days of YNAB at no charge. So if you'd like to try it, you can try it for free before you start paying for it.
You mentioned on the personal budget, like an emergency fund. Are there guidelines or recommendations as to what individuals should have in an emergency fund?
Absolutely. So lots of different viewpoints out there. The standard seems to be 6 months of expenses in your emergency fund. So if you're doing zero-based budgeting, then your entire income amount, right? In our example, I think our income was $6,900 a month, and we budgeted every single dollar. So it's $6,900 a month times 6 months. That would be $41,400. Now that may feel daunting, you know, in the beginning to think that you would have that much in an emergency fund. So another way to do it is to take 50% or maybe one person's income, right? If you have a two-person household, two-person income household, take one person's income, multiply that times 6 months, and work on saving that amount. So some people say 6 months, some people say 8 months, some people say 3 months. This all comes down to your risk tolerance, right? I know people that have 2 years of income in reserves for an emergency fund. I know other people that do the very minimum at 3 months. But I would say 3 months is the absolute minimum. The goal should be 6 months. And then depending on your risk tolerance, if you're highly conservative, you may be an 8-month plus person. But it's always based on your monthly expenses times however many months you're saving for.
And one thing to keep in mind as you're saving for that, eventually you'll reach your goal for your emergency fund, and then that money could be allocated somewhere else within your budget until such time as you have to dip into the emergency fund and use some of it, and then you'd want to go back and start replenishing that again.
Absolutely. And in YNAB, they call that rolling with the punches, right? So sometimes you have to borrow money from one category to put in another category. Sometimes you've met your goal for savings in a particular category. And so now you can allocate that money that you would have budgeted to that category somewhere else. And so as you become more advanced and more in control of your money, you can make those decisions. All right, here's our contact information. So Waldo and myself are on the right-hand side. If you have any specific questions or you think you need some one-on-one support through budgeting, we're here to help you. We also have other business counselors at WWBC with Debbie Gorski and Jonathan. And so at the end of this, we'd love for you to complete the survey at the close of this webinar. And our next webinar in March is on the 21st from 12 to 1, driving traffic and sales to your brick and mortar location. So mark that down on your calendar. If you have an interest in attending that, look for upcoming emails from us. Any more questions before we close out, Waldo?
I do not see any more that have come in. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you have good luck in your budgeting process, and hope that the tools we've given you are very useful. Again, our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, March 21st from noon until 1. The topic will be driving traffic and sales to your brick and mortar location. So if you've got friends in business that you think might be benefit from that, pass that information on. Look for the emails coming out for registration on that. Please take time to complete the survey as you leave the program, and it launches automatically. We do read each survey, and we enjoy your feedback. It's important to us and to our funding partners. And if we can be of any assistance to you personally, please feel free to contact us. Thank you for joining us, and everyone have a good afternoon. We'll see you next time.